Yes, today we are taking a look at a game I've gotten requests to review for the last 2 years. Today we're talking about Mass Effect 3. Now, Mass Effect 3 has some huge problems, there is no doubt. But something that I've noticed a lot of people who talk about this game miss is it also has some very good things. And it also has a lot of people who quite frankly have nitpicked the game to death. Yes, it has some big issues, but when you pick out every little teeny tiny thing, you just come across as being bitter as opposed to trying to make a point. Now yes, each nitpick can be argued as to why it's a problem. However, I feel at that point people are just looking for things to complain about because of the main irritants that hit them early on. So I'm going to try to find a way to speak on the real problems of the game and the real victories of the game in an equal and fair manner. Now first and foremost, let me say I thought the gameplay was a step forward from Mass Effect 2 in certain levels. It was also a step back on certain levels. Allow me to explain. The run and gun gameplay I really enjoyed, and I enjoyed it better than I did in Mass Effect 2. Shepard feels more agile, and she's able to get into places and get into cover easier than she could in the previous 2 games. On top of the new melee attack I found to be very fun, particularly on lower difficulties when you can just run out commando style and just start beating people. But is the enemy AI. Even on Insanity difficulty, many sections are a complete breeze, and to those looking for an extreme challenge, that can be disappointing. Now the main problem people have with this game can all be directed back to executive mandate. You see, the company BioWare was told pretty clearly how much they could spend and when the game needed to be out, and they were given a pretty hard deadline. This is why some areas of the game feel rushed. It's not laziness, it's lack of time. Now some have asked why didn't the company just say no, and tell their parent company that they needed more time, and this wasn't going to fly. Let me be perfectly blunt. Had Electronic Arts decided to cut ties with BioWare over this contract being voided, first and foremost, a lot of people would lose their job. People who have families to support, people who have mortgages to pay, etc. And bottom line, I refuse to ask anyone to put artistic integrity over their livelihoods. Now the second major issue of executive mandate was that the game was supposed to be playable to people who had never played the series. This is not how you do a trilogy. Particularly the end of a trilogy. And in fact, EA already learned that lesson, you would have thought, with the release of Ultima 9. For those who don't know the Ultima series, it was a sort of a PC version of the pen and paper role-playing games. When it got to the 9th and final installment, EA wanted to milk as much money as possible out of the game that they could. So they made it to where it would be fresh for new people as well as old players. However, the older players had to deal with a lot of things the character was doing that made no sense to them simply because it was introducing things to other players.
Eva Sagralum of the Gargoyles.
I'm sorry, but what? I mean, who are the Gargoyles?
What, the Gargoyles? Ah, you wouldn't know them. You only stole their most sacred holy book, dropped the Earth's crust on their homeland, and spent the entirety of Ultima 6 dealing with them, you dumb fuck! Betrayal!
And it's the same thing here. Shepard asks questions she obviously knows, and so does the player, because it's supposed to be there for newcomers. And that is a fail. Now, like I said, gameplay-wise, I think the game does do pretty well. I actually had a lot of fun on my first playthrough, and on subsequent playthroughs, I've had fun again. The AI is an issue, granted, but otherwise I do find the game to be quite enjoyable. The best part of this game, however, is the multiplayer. I sank well over 300 hours into the multiplayer. I enjoyed every minute of it, and honestly, if I could still get a game going right now, I'd probably still be playing it. It's that addictive. Now, getting to the elephant in the room, and that is, of course, the ending of the game. Yes, the original ending was absolute bollocks. I completely concur. However, despite what people online may say, this is not the worst thing to happen to a franchise I've ever seen. Anyone who says that clearly has never sat through Highlander the Source.
So here we are, born to be kings.
We're the princes of the universe. Here we belong, fighting to survive in a world with the darkest power.
doesn't excuse it. Just lets you know we're not in the boat alone. More importantly, I feel the fan base somewhat overreacted. There's a difference between righteous outrage and
I'll get you for this! You won't escape my wrath! I'll get you! You're all mine!
that. And over the years, people have just refused to let this die. And I get it. People who really enjoyed the game really wanted to hold on to this ending. But you gotta grow, man. It's time to move on past it. If you didn't like it, just be done with it. Yet every time you see anyone talk about any aspect of BioWare, sure enough, there'll be 5 or 6 of these people. But to be blunt, I'm not going to go into the endings because, quite frankly, they've been talked about 100 million times. Just Google Mass Effect 3 and I'm sure you'll find at least 200 videos on the subject. Now, through DLC, was things made better? Yes, in my opinion they were. Was it perfect? Was it what we would hope the trilogy would be? No. Was it the best we could have hoped for given the circumstances? Yes. And now it's time for the final verdict. I give Mass Effect 3 a 2.5 out of 5. I feel like the good and the bad outweigh each other to give us a fairly average shooter. If you enjoy those, pick it up and I'm sure you'll like it. If you don't, skip it. Until next time, my name is Vega Goose saying thank you very much for watching and I'll see you next time.